Brilliant. I think so. Like, yeah, for me, I was when I was younger, I was quite, I was quite heavily a dyslexic lad. Like, I failed a majority of my GCSEs. Really, I think I passed most of what I needed to get into the core, apart from English. And that was always, I think, like from a young age, that was always kind of drilled into me that I wasn't ever really going to do anything. That was something that was really heavily sort of pushed in by English teachers or people. I had those. I don't know if any of you lads are dyslexic, but I had those like massive fat yellow glasses, and that was yeah, that was always a huge thing that really like. I think as a young child, I was just very heavily underconfident because of that, sort of constantly, wound into that position, and then led up to seeing a load of dicks. Now, obviously not. But, but yeah, I think that was something that, like, from a young age, was always sort of drilled into me that, like, you're not really going to make it very far. You're not really going to do anything. This is just you now. And that's quite deep. But that was it really. It was like, right, you failed pretty much most of your GCSEs. You're fucking not going to go to university. There's probably not going to be that much for you. And then I remember sort of like I worked in like Burton's. I don't know if you remember that. I think they're closed down now. Obviously, like Top Man and stuff have gone. Went into like yeah, went into like factory kind of work, those kind of things. Very like like I'm not slating that industry, but very easy to come by work. That was kind of the process I was going into. And I just didn't really know what I was doing. I'll be honest with you. Sort of like, you talked about like was health and fitness like a big thing with you. From the age of kind of 15, I was in the gym, and I was always introduced to the gym by like friends, by those sort of people. A couple of mates I had were joining different services. They were either joining the RAF, they were joining the army, they were joining, different things. They were going into that kind of element. And it was always a big thing where I was like, okay, that's probably going to be some interest. I could actually see myself, being proud of something for once. Because that was always when I was younger. It was just like, just kept failing. I just kept failing shit, really. That's the best way to describe it. I then, off the back of that, I decided I was actually going to take it quite seriously. I was like, this is something I actually need to, work behind me. So I think I did 2 years work and saved for those 2 years. And then I ended up going to a military prep college, which was Bicton College. And it was run by a guy called Di Phillips, who's actually an MBE. He's like a ex-Royal Marines major. Like it's just scary. Like, I don't know, you probably, obviously, I think it was Bill, you said you're just leaving the army now, aren't you? You know those blokes who are like old school, like very old school. Like, he was like 6'4", Welsh, bald, and just like 50, but just massive. And it was that type of bloke where you would be like, he's clearly drinking whiskey and like not even be bothered. It was like, yeah, I've got like 10 houses and I've had 5 wives. Like, it was like that kind of guy. If he's what I'm hoping he's not watching this, but like, he's just an absolute legend. He was just a legend. And I remember when I first went, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna like join the army as a chef, or like, I'm not really sure what I wanted to do. And he was like, no, not joining the Marines. And I was like, right, okay. And there was like a group of us that he kind of was like really focused on making sure we got in. And I think that was, for me, it was like I still wasn't really sure of myself. Still wasn't really like, I didn't really know, could I do this? Could I achieve that? I remember like I had summers in between where I went and worked back at the factory that I was at before, and there was a couple of lads who were either ex-army or whatever, and they were like, "Oh, I wouldn't go and try and do that." Like, because I think lads do like either just in general with the Marines, or just in that kind of thing. It's kind of people go, oh, "You just won't be able to do that." Like, it's just one of them things. So like, lower your expectations. And that, to be fair, for my whole life, that has been a recurring theme. People just saying, you can't do that, don't try. Yeah, so that pissed me off a bit, really, for quite a young age. So I was quite an angry young man. Anyway, prepped to join, and then obviously, like I say, went in, I think I went in at 19, just about to turn 20. I think I literally turned 20 and just hid that while I was in training. Yeah, as Billy said, like, I ended up getting...
Same time I joined the army, actually, 19.
Yeah. It's mad, it's fucking flown. But yeah, so I was like, 19-year-old lad, joined. I got injured at week 20. No, sorry, I failed. Sorry, I failed the bottom field pass out at week 20. Then with the Corps, you go into Hunter Company, and there's 2 different sides of Hunter Company. There's Bamford, which is there's Hunter Company, and then it breaks down into slightly different sections. So you might have lads who are in Hunter Company, but they've failed fitness tests and they're there for remedial fitness to then go back into training. Or you've got lads that are in Hunter Company and they're injured and they're getting, rehabilitation, and then they're going down that route. So I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember what the side of Hunter where you basically just shit at fizz you go into. But I ended up in that position and then actually got injured in that position. So I was like, oh, I'm shit at climbing ropes for me. That was the hardest part. and then went from there into like actual hunter, I suppose, in that sense. I can't remember the names for it, but yeah, in that side, and then ended up injured. Tore my hip flexor, so that was a pain in the ass. And then I had 7 months recovery and properly get back in, and then I went straight back into a troop. Luckily, there were certain things that I wouldn't say skipped, but managed to get past, which was quite good, as in from rehab. And like Bill said there, that I think that was shit because you're kind of like I remember so many times being on the phone to my mum and dad and being like, "What the fuck am I doing? Like, why am I still here? Why am I still going through this?" And like, it is like it is like a lonely place I think in training, especially at that point. But yeah, that was crap. And then there was I remember like I said sort of previously about like maybe people when I was younger, and then also people when I was like even at the college, just people saying like I think you should probably just end it. Like, there's no real point. You're probably not going to make it. There's some ridiculous number, like the amount of people that go and hunter never come out. Like, and it's kind of was an ongoing thing. So that was a bit shit. Naturally, confidence was pretty low off the back of that. I actually managed to say to finally actually get into training again, and then from week 20 to like 32 was fine. I wasn't. I'm not gonna lie. I was not the best recruit, and I'll hold my hands up and fully admit like I was never like an absolute gooch fucking operator. I was just surviving. I would say that's the best way to describe it. So like, yeah, off the back of that, really kind of pushed through training. I was that geezer at the fucking back, and then I remember like I've told this story in a few podcasts though about like I was at the very back of the back for like all the tests for pretty much like the ones that you do individually, all the ones that you do like as a group, and then you part your ways at certain points. I remember like I failed everything, as in that you do the practice runs for until the actual day. And then on the day is the only day I passed any of the tests. So I remember like the troop striker being like, how are you still here? Like, how are you fucking still here, man? But yeah, I remember that being hilarious. Yeah, I think like a recurring thing for me was always just being told that it's not going to work for you. You can't do it up to that point, really. And then finally, obviously, actually fucking managed to do it. Yeah, and that was obviously quite a big thing. Like you say, like mentally and physically, I think that does teach you a lot of lessons. Just being in the military in general, I think will teach you a lot of lessons that you probably don't appreciate. That maybe others don't really understand. I think like there's certain skills, even like discipline, structure, planning. Like you said earlier, Tom, about like preparation. I think that we joke about it, but we know how to do it. First, I think there's a lot of lads, or even it's not necessarily the younger lads, like because I'll sort of touch upon that in a minute, but like a varied age group of guys that I coach, and a big struggle you have is kind of blokes who are maybe in their 30s, 40s, who've never really learnt those skills at a younger age. So when they're at a point where they're in a management role or in a proper job role, or like, I've got lads who are running businesses, when they're at that point and they've not yet learnt those skills, it's then a very serious problem. From 18 to say 25, if you're maybe working under someone, they maybe do all the work for you and you can get away with it because you just kind of you're the black man, you're the hidden sort of, you're kind of hidden in the ranks or whatever. But I think when it gets to a point where people are given responsibility and they're like, fuck, I actually can't handle this because I don't have the skills to do it. So I'll sort of touch upon that in a minute. But anyway, like a recurring theme was always for me, like just getting fucking shit on really. I was just told that, yeah, you're not going to be able to do this. So naturally, like just walked around quite unsure of myself really. And then as I say, passed out the core. I went and did 2 years at 4-5, so I did like Norway, all those sort of trips. That was quite good. Did 2 years in Scotland, which was just living in the middle of nowhere. There's some good piss ups there. Definitely a lot of toilet blokes, but yeah. There to ship and was on board HMS Albion for 2 years. I got pinged for drives, so it was a bit of a shitter really. It's one of those where I should have sorted my career out earlier. But to be honest, lads, like for me, when I joined the Corps, I kind of knew that I was only ever going to do minimum. I was like, I'll do 4 years plus training, so 5 years or whatever, and that'll be me. Like if I'm not going to go to uni, I'll do something different in that element. Yeah, and then left, and then that first 7 months, like you think about like you say, Billy, like lads aren't even paying for toilet paper, and I know this is how like molecular I kind of wanted to go into because it does make sense. It's a relatable thing. Like you don't even pay for toilet paper in the Corps, and then when you come out and you're sat there thinking like, fuck me, I've got a £1,200 council tax bill for this year. What the fuck? Or you're sat there going, I've got to pay for toilet paper and bleach. Like, well, I've never done this. Like, or water. Like it's weird, isn't it? Like in the core, you're paying £98 a month, which you don't even see come off your salary, and then suddenly you're sat there going, I've got to manage my fucking water bill. And it's just weird. Like it is just weird. And then you start thinking all these crazy, like you say, if you're left on your own, it is a bit. Yeah. Luckily, as I say, kind of that was the first incident of why specifically I focus on like mental health and confidence. But then the lockdown hit, and it's good and bad in the sense of like my current girlfriend now kind of moved in, so that obviously that kind of loneliness, and she was very understanding. Like in that first period, when I was first, there was a lot of things that I went through that I would, just a lot of things that she dealt with really that I probably wouldn't say a normal person would. I think the problem is like when you do go into any new industry, like we're used to, especially when you're in the military, you're used to being told instructions and doing them. And I think that's a big thing that I lacked is that I was like, well, what am I doing with this PT? What am I doing with the business? What am I doing with, what's the element of all this? What I really want to help is lads that were sat in my shoes, but at all different ages. So, you can be an underconfident man and be 60 and have 4 kids and have an amazing job. And behind closed doors, you're sat there with all these thoughts thinking, fuck me, like, I don't know how to solve this, or I don't know how to sort that, or I'm not planning, or I'm not putting myself first. And I think that's a huge thing for me is that over the last 12 months, like I speak to lads all the time who've gone, yeah, I broke up with Mrs. First start of lockdown 3 months in, and I've sat in a fucking flat on my own for the last 9 months. And these things have started to transpire, and I've started to let standards slip. I've started to let my health slip. I've started to let mentally, I just don't feel great. And I think that's the reason for me is why specifically confidence and men is that was me, like very heavily, that was me. And I've gone through the process of, taking that to another level or sorting that out. And I think for me, it's a case of, I don't want any bloke to continue to be sat in the shoes I was, because that's just not it's not going to fucking end well. Like it's not going to go in the right direction, and that's something that I've like built between Phil, Dan, Isaac, is that's my purpose on this planet is to make sure that no bloke's just sat there thinking I've got fucking no one to relate to really. But that's in a nutshell. That's kind of the last 27 years really. But yeah.
I love how honed in you are. You've kind of mentioned it a few times.
Yeah.
There's like in your approach to coaching. If we go into that sort of topic now, is kind of you've almost through all this experience you've got and through all these other coaches you've been mentored by, you've honed in on this approach of your purpose is to work on men who want to build confidence. Yeah. And I notice it with loads of your social media out there. You'll constantly be like, lads, you'll start it with like lads. And that's how you start your stories, for example, or one of your posts. And it's obviously a conscious decision where you are purposely talking to the lads out there because that's who you want to. Your purpose is to look for guys who maybe are lacking that confidence, and then obviously you want to build their confidence, mentally and physically. I like the passion as well. I think it seems to be like that. It's a really good approach, really. I like your approach to the space. I think it's really
I think for me, like people have asked, they're like, but why don't you coach women, or like all these things are like. I'm like, no, I'm not saying it'd be unethical. I'm just saying that I wouldn't be comfortable to take someone through something that I haven't already done. And I think for me, that's a huge thing. Is like I wouldn't want to try and help someone if I don't 100% know the pains and problems myself. The same as like if you hadn't done training and you were a corporal, it'd be a bit like how. Like, so I think for me that is the home thing. I think the passion comes from like I just understand, and like you said there, Billy, about like when you lads do struggle when they leave the the military, or like all sorts of different walks of life people are in, is that it can just be quite a big problem, and blokes do not talk like we'll much rather just push feelings in than actually even just say like, yeah, I've actually got an issue. Yeah, it's not even necessarily just bottling it up as well. Like lads will get right to the fucking end. They'll get right to the end where they're like, I probably reckon this is it now. Versus actually just have a chat with someone and be like, look, let's just talk through why you're feeling this way. And I think that's a huge thing. Is like actually really just looking at what's the reason? What's the reason? Like, so I've got a quote on my wall. Because I'll be honest, right? Like the last 2 years has not been smooth. It sounds simple, but it's not been. Like you say there, Billy. I think it is when you leave. There are a lot of things you go through, but like there's so many thoughts that you think. So this is all from Dan. It's not like this is what I've learned on his course, but like I think it's like 70,000 thoughts you have a day, and I think 50,000 of them are wired to be negative. So because of the fact that from a stone age, you're wired to protect yourself, you're wired to, make sure that you live each day. That's what you're wired to as a person. So like you have thoughts of going broke. You have thoughts of, I'm going to become homeless. You have all these thoughts of whatever. You don't realize you have them, but you are having them. When otherwise, if we didn't, we'd all go out and fucking spend all of the money in our accounts right now, because otherwise we'd be like, well, why wouldn't I do that? I know I'm going to be perfectly fine. So like you're hardwired to think negatively. But what happens is when things go the opposite and they go hardwired to think negatively 100% of the time, and you start thinking quite heavy thoughts, sort of on that process. But like you said there, Billy, I think a huge thing that for me it's that I've learned from quite a few, I don't know how to say it without saying a few inspirational people that I've seen that are men that have done very good, really gone out there and done like heavy things, like Di, like Phil, like Dan, all these lads. And I think for me, it's just letting lads get down to basic principles and be like, well, let's look at what we need to do differently to actually help you to set yourself up every week to win, versus, or even look at a situation, like when you're in the military, you review constantly, don't you? You look at different things that you can review and you go, right, we went into that section attack, how did it go? Oh, that went well, that didn't go quite as well, let's look at something we can do differently next time. And I want to teach lads that.